All right, well, my name is Dawn, but you don't need to know that. We're here to see these two gentlemen, and I will let them introduce themselves, and we will jump right in. If you have any questions during this session, all you gotta do is step up to this mic. It does this, so you can, adjust to your height. But please use your normal voice when speaking on the microphone. Don't feel like you need to sound a listener because it's going to be hard to hear you. So go ahead and speak like normal and get close to the mic. Don't lick it, just get close to it. All right.
Am I on? Also, if you hate speaking into a microphone and you want to ask a question, just pop your hand up and I'll run down, you can tell me the question, and then I'll say into the microphone.
Or I'll walk down, not run her. Isn't he a gentleman?
I just know because I actually hate speaking in public speaking. Because as a kid, all I wanted to do was draw and not talk. And what I find amazing about this whole endeavor is that it's kind of like the complete opposite now of what I do, or like something, I have to actually talk about what I do. Sitting with the microphone and blabbing, I'm not talking to Joe, I'm just going to launch into it.
No, I was just enjoying watching you living your nightmare.
My nightmare, yeah.
So what you're saying is that we're torturing you right now.
Just a little bit, but I'm okay. So my name is Dean Rankine, and I'm a comic book artist and writer from Melbourne, Australia. And one of the questions you should ask later on is for Josh to do his Australian accent. He's been working on it, and it's pretty amazing. So I'm just putting it out there. No pressure, no pressure. Basically I'm a cartoonist, and I've worked on the Simpsons comic, Futurama, Rick and Morty, Invader Zim, Oggy and the Cockroaches. I've got about like 2 pages in a Hellboy comic. I Hate Fairyland by Scotty Young. I illustrate books. I have a thing called Can You Find the Easter Bunny? Where I've drawn lots and lots of rabbits. I wrote an illustrated book series of Timmy the TikTok Pony, written by Magda Zabansky. And I have a book series called The Death Metal Emo Elves, which is about elves that learn how to rock.
What?
Yeah.
Sounds amazing.
I'm Josh Skye. I'm a writer based in the...
G'day.
G'day. I can call you mates, right? My name is Josh Skye. I'm a writer based in the US. I write comics, I write television, I write a lot of fiction as well, and articles and all sorts of stuff. I currently write for He-Man, the Masters of the Universe. I've done writing for She-Ra, for Sunman, for Mattel, for Hot Wheels, for Marvel, Ben 10, and Heavy Metal Illustrated. Some other stuff in there, but I don't want to bore you guys. I'm really glad to be here. I grew up in Maui, Hawaii, and I think New Zealand is pretty beautiful. That's a lot coming from someone from Hawaii, honestly. So it's really a privilege to be here.
It's really funny because when I moved here and I started meeting everybody, they'd say they were going on holiday, and I'd be, where are you going on holiday? And they'd go, Hawaii. And that confuses me, because I'm always like, but you live in a land of volcanoes and green things and ocean.
Well, it's warmer.
But it is much warmer, and they have, I've never been to Hawaii, but the reports is that it is gobsmackingly gorgeous, and they're really glad they went there, even though it's very similar.
The reports are accurate. Yes, it is pretty darn gorgeous. Very warm, also. Hawaii is like the American version of New Zealand. I feel like New Zealand's like the British version of Hawaii. That's like kind of how I've taken it so far. So no, it's also like it's like driving through Lord of the Rings when you're here too, which is pretty sweet. So anyway.
Very cool. Does anyone have any questions they want to kick us off with? Otherwise, we'll just chat on up here. Oh, we got a question.
That was a game.
So, Dean, is there anything you struggle to draw?
Sorry, say again?
Is there anything you struggle to draw? Because obviously people say that they can't draw hands.
Oh, struggle to draw. Yeah, I've got everything. Yeah, that's a really good question. During COVID, I did like a hand washing cartoon. It was like, make sure you wash your hand every panel, like the hands get progressively worse.
I mean, the only thing I've seen him draw that I didn't have struggle with were like these self-nude portraits that he works on.
Yeah, no, let's see, draw me like one of your French
Seamless.
Yeah, I'm very cartoony. So I could never draw like a serious Batman. Like, I did like art course. I don't mind drawing like life drawing and stuff like that. But I'm very cartoony, and it always turns out kind of cartoony, even though I don't want it to. But I've had to. It's a weird thing when it comes to comics. You have to start drawing things that you don't particularly like to draw. Like I like drawing goofy characters, but I've had to learn how to do perspective. Or like I avoided that for years, and if I can get away with not having to like ever draw a straight line, I'll do that. But yeah, so now so things like perspective, cars, I find particularly, inanimate objects I don't find particularly stimulating. So I've got things I think I've got things I can draw, but not that I don't have a particularly strong affinity to. I hope that I'm passable enough that people don't notice how dodgy they are, if you know what I mean.
Apparently he hates drawing Rick and Morty.
Yeah, that's the word. Yeah, no, but it's a good question. Yeah, I think all of us have weak spots in any creative kind of thing, and we do tend to go, I just gloss over, exposition when writing, that may be not my jam, I might just gloss over that area here, or character development or something like that. So I don't think I'm alone with, you kind of avoid things that you don't want to do, but eventually it comes out. I actually prior to working on The Simpsons, sorry, but rambling, I was like, I'm an indie cartoonist, so if you ever see my early stuff, like one eye's down here, one eye's up here, like anatomy is like out the window. But so when I got Simpsons, I thought I really need to learn how to draw. Like I can't just get away with just doing it like my style, because I wanted to do it more and more like Simpsons style. And so then I had to really think about anatomy, which is a silly thing when you think about Simpsons, but the Simpsons characters have anatomy, like where their wrists is and where your elbows bend. It's not just like rubber arms. So I really tried to hone that. Also, it's kind of like there's a lot of substructure, if you know what I mean. Like, if you ever draw Lisa, this is Lisa's eyes, this is Lisa's head, like circles. This is where another circle around where the bottom of the points of the hair come. This is the outside. It's quite technical, but it's great how to draw Simpsons, which was like, became my Bible. Because when you pick up Simpsons book, you kind of want it to look like the Simpsons in my mind. So yeah, I tried really hard to try and squash as much as me down as I could to be on model, but I think I often failed. Because you just kind of, you leak in. But what I did find as well, that then you, when you're drawing these properties like Rick and Morty, suddenly your style looks a little bit more like Rick and Morty. There's like a blowback, which is actually quite nice. Thank you. Thanks.
And for you, Josh, sure. If there was anything you could, be a part of and write, what would it be?
There's so many properties that I hate using those corporate Hollywood terms like properties and IP and stuff like that. But there's a lot of stuff I really would love to write for that I've been a fan of as a kid. And I'm in a weird part of my career where I'm starting to get to write for some of that stuff, and I absolutely love it. But there's a part of me that's good that it's like one of those cheesy movies you watch on Lifetime. It's like the magic was always in you, right? And I'm realizing the original work, the stuff that got me those gigs, is the most important stuff, because that's the new stuff that you're trying to say. I would love to write lines for Optimus Prime all day, or Dino Riders and all these properties on Marvel, more Marvel stuff. I'd love to be a writer on Spider-Man. I think I'd crush it, honestly. So there's a lot of stuff I would really love to write. I'm having an absolute blast on He-Man. I'm loving not only writing for these tried and true characters, but trying to grow them in a logical manner, and also coming up with new backstories and parts of the lore. So yeah, I would say, but if I had to choose, I would say toss up between probably Spider-Man and Transformers.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Do you remember, Josh, the first kind of story you wrote? How did you start writing stories?
Yeah, I was telling Dean this story the other day. I mean, I've heard stories a lot when I was a kid. There are two that come to mind. One was It was in 6th grade, and we had a science project, and it was one of those when we had to write a science fiction story about like burrowing deep into the earth, you know, like our own version of turning into the earth. And it was one of those projects where they gave you like 6 months to do it, and your whole grade was like counting on it, and like people were like typing it up and putting their own pictures and doing all this stuff. And I was a total slacker, and I literally wrote my story like 2 periods beforehand, like longhand. I didn't even type it. And I turned it on like, I'm gonna fail science. And Mr. Donnelly gave me back my, I remember the grades came in and I was so scared. I was 11, and I remember him sliding it to me, and it said A-, and I got the minus because I didn't type it, right? And I was like, oh, why did I get an A? He was like, I liked your story. And I remember some kids had like turned it in, and like their grades were like, okay, and I was like, oh wow, maybe I have a talent for this. I just let that talent be dormant for years since then, of course. But then when I was 14, we played Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm sure there's any D&D fans here, besides myself, right? So I played Dungeons and Dragons, and I realized I loved coming up with the adventures more than I loved playing the game, and I loved DMing, and kids liked my games, and I would do my own stories and my own lore and stuff, and I feel like D&D may have been my first writing break, really. So yeah.
Awesome. And Dean, similar question for you about with drawing. When do you remember starting to kind of put pencil to paper?
This is a bit my go-to story. It's still clear in my mind. I was in kindergarten. You called kindergarten here? Preschool. You know, the thing before school.
Yeah.
The kindy. I drew a possum. And someone, I think it was the teacher or the teacher's helper, said how good it was. And I believed them.
So good the teacher wanted to run it over.
Yeah, it's like that. So for me it was like, I'm an absolute praise monkey. And as a kid, I desperately wanted that praise and to be known as being good at something. So I think that was like, not the only praise I got, but as I kind of was always hunting that praise, that positive feedback. I think I still am now. They go, oh, that's good. I go, oh yeah. You know, yeah, I do love that. But what's really interesting is like, I think so, just the power of words. Like, so my wife doesn't draw, and someone said to her when she was a kid, oh, you're not really an artist, are you? And killed it, and that was the end of it, and never picked up a pencil again. So I think words matter. My possum when I was in kindergarten was not good. Right? Kids in kindergarten do not draw good possums. But that power of that positive reinforcement, I don't believe in talent per se when it comes to art. It's so drawing and writing. It's if you have an interest in it, it's about putting the time in, and the more time you put in, the better you get. You may not be at this level, but you're going to be better than you were the year before.
A great example of this is, you guys may have heard of this director named Peter Jackson, and if you watch his first film, I'm sorry, visually it's not that great. Like, this movie is like, wow, that was pretty cheesy, right? But that guy directed the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So like I can't tell you how many people I've seen who've had trajectories where they really just started, they weren't that great, and then by the time they get to where they're meant to be, I mean, they're phenomenal.
So in some ways I think it's better to be average, because then you'll work at it. If you're just, if straight out the gate you're amazing, you're not going to progress quite as much, I don't think. So yeah, just words matter. If you've got your young people in your life and they show you something, please encourage them. It doesn't matter if it's not good then, but those words matter. And then if they want to pursue that, they can do that. So I think it's really important.
Or you can just crush the competition right there.
Get in early.
Job security. Yeah. I do think it's interesting, Dean, though, that you said that it was a possum, because then you also said that you like to draw quite odd-looking.
Yeah, I don't.
Possum being the beginning.
Yeah.
An odd-looking creature.
Hey, question for Dean. Whose style is the hardest to draw?
That I've done? Do you mean? This is it's kind of like a pointless answer, but I did this project last year that I can't tell you what it is, right? I refer to it as the Scottish project because it was based on a Scottish property. But I found, like, even though I'm cartoon, thought I could draw that, I started drawing it. I am drowning here. I am failing miserably. But the editor, I drawn 2 pages and I said, oh, sorry, sorry, it's not working. But the editor was so supportive, going, no, you're doing okay. And to kind of like draw out, these are the bits here that you kind of need to improve on, and with like a red marker, which was actually kind of really, because not just this is how you can improve on this. So I ended up finishing the whole project, and by the end of it, I was like, oh yeah, this is okay. I've actually got to a place that I'm comfortable with this style. Again, once again, words matter. If he'd come down hard on me, I would have said, sorry, I'm just pulling the pin. But because he was encouraging and showed me where that I could improve, we actually finished the gig. I guess more relevant maybe, like when I started The Simpsons comic, if you see my early Simpsons, they are rough. Like, I did like a snake holding up the quickie mart, and I don't know why they said yes to my, I'll do my quick story, you've heard this before. But I was doing these kids magazines, and the work dried up. I went to my local supermarket and I picked up a Simpsons comic, and it all looked amazing, but there was one page that was kind of off model and not as good as the other ones, and I thought if I worked really hard, I could be good enough to be the worst Simpsons artist. I didn't have to be the best one, I just had to be good enough to be the worst. Right?
What he's describing is how every screenwriter in Hollywood also works. If I could just write Beverly Hills Chihuahua, like I could just get that level.
Yeah, because this thing, you don't have to be the best. You just have to be like good enough to be the worst in that. It's like playing a rugby or something like that. You be the worst rugby player in that group, but you're still playing. That's what I wanted. So then I started setting stuff up. But yeah, it was really rough, and I've had this huge learning curve over the years, and I think it's really fortunate because I've had this huge learning curve over Simpsons, and then when Rick and Morty came along, I could actually hit that pretty easily because it's not that so far out of my wheelhouse. So I hope that answers the question. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I love what you're saying about that. It's really interesting because does Australia, I know we don't have it in the States really, but does Australia have the whole tall poppy thing like we have?
Yes,
here
yeah,
in
we
New
talk
Zealand?
about that tall puppy. So I think New Zealand, and I believe just like we own this self-depreciating kind of thing. We never say that we're great at anything, and if someone raises above the average, you got to cut them down. You can't be too smart at school. You can't be too good at this. And we had this kind of like a slice them down, which is it's like this, like you can't be too egotistical.
Americans must do really well out here.
I think it's maybe just all like
counted as being conceited quite often.
Yeah,
Interesting.
The other thing I find really interesting, let me know about if any like the people here, if you think this is true. In Australia, you kind of have to work overseas or do something big overseas to be valued when you come back. If you're a musical act, for instance, you have to be big in the States before you're valued here. Is that kind of the same here, do you think?
Yeah.
Me and my wife talk about this, and I go, oh man, I kind of fantasize about honestly moving to a place like New Zealand or back to Hawaii. And she said, and I realized that like other places you become kind of exotic, for a better lack of way of putting it. Like in LA, we're more attractive to other markets, like my writing and stuff, than if I lived there, right? Like in Hawaii, so Hawaii's like, oh yeah, we want you to come to more conventions and do stuff because you're like in the mainland, right? You're in Hollywood.
Okay,
Where in Hollywood, it's like there's so many writers and artists, right? But so I think about that, but it's still worth going to Paradise. I think eventually, maybe I'll be like you, hosting.
Highly recommend. Best decision I ever made.
Yeah.
New Zealand is amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you got that bit of validation. What was from your teacher? And you carried on. What was your first project that you got where you were like, holy gosh, I can't believe I'm writing on this?
He-Man. Literally, I didn't even believe them when I got the job. Like, what happened was I had written, and this is why it's important to do your own work that's original, because A, you own it, but B, you can put it out there and it doesn't matter. I can't tell you how many people, like, in Hollywood, they're always like, Josh, send me something. These are friends that I've had drinks with many, many times. They go, Josh, send me something. Never reads anything. But then I started posting my own stuff on, like, LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever, and Facebook. And I think that when you didn't give it to them and you just put it out there, I feel like there's a secret, like, okay, how good is this person really, right? And that's great, because if you really prepare yourself and you're ready for that, and hopefully you exceed expectations. But I published a story in Heavy Metal Illustrated, and a friend of mine at Mattel read it, and she called me and she said, hey, like, He-Man needs a writer, would you be interested? I'm gonna put your name in the ring for it. I said, sure. My name's been put in the ring for a lot of things, so I didn't really think much of it. And they said, hey, we want to do a Zoom. Do you want to do a Zoom? It was during COVID. I said, sure. So I'm on the Zoom. And then by the end of the Zoom, they're like, okay, well, here's your first deadline. We need like 15 issues or something written. And I'm like, okay, great. And can you do the deadline? I'm like, absolutely. And they log off, and it felt like I was just looking at my hands and someone had just handed me like keys to the Lamborghini, you know? Like at Ferris Bueller's Day Off, I'm like, they're gonna let me drive this thing, you know? So I remember, because you go through so much, as you know, like to get anything, is really the truth. Like, when you level up, you get stuff easier, but I think it's hard for everyone, honestly. Even like the really big people that we look to, like I've interviewed a lot of those guys and women, and like, it's, you know, it's tough for everyone. But the truth of the matter is, like, when I got He-Man, I was like, oh my gosh, but then I looked at that date that I didn't want to blow, and that was the week I was getting married in Mexico to her, and my wife. So there were pictures of me, like, during wedding rehearsals working on, like, Rise of the Snake Man was the name of the issue. So that was a bizarre trip.
What every bride wants to hear. Sorry, honey, I can't participate really.
Working on a He-Man comic book, babe. Priorities. Yeah.
And did you have like one of those moments where like, oh my gosh?
It was Simpsons. But it's interesting, I was 38 before I got Simpsons. So I'd been in books and magazines and comics and so at the time you could send, there was an email that you could send things to. So I sent like full stories, like 2 pages. I'd written, drawn the whole thing. And they said yes to it. I was like, oh my God, that's like incredible. In some ways, like, so actually getting Simpsons, once I started sending things there, wasn't that difficult. They actually got something pretty quick, but it's that 38-year lead up to getting to the place that would say yes. That, you know, nothing does happen overnight. And then I needed to, in my mind, I needed to improve my drawing to be more on model. But when my first one came out, I thought, what if that's it? What if you do, like, I had 2 pages, like 2 pages in it, it's like, can you put on your resume? Like, you know, you should would. But it was like, and it really made me think about success. So what's success? Like, I had, like, Simpsons, oh my God, that's great, I mentioned conventions, all this kind of stuff. But I was just doing the same stuff that I had done all this time. And it could have been very easy for me to not send stuff there as well. And so, I don't know, it's like, you know, I think we should maybe try to look for that success in more in internal ways, like, oh, I'm writing what I want, I draw what I want, that kind of thing.
The magic is in you.
Well, so talking to both of you and then having talked to some of the other guests, it seems like, yes, there's talent, but then also persistence, belief in persistence, the practice of persistence is a huge ingredient in that success batter.
People come up, they show their work, like they've got their sketchbooks, they'll come to me and at a convention, and everybody draws better than me. No, it's not like you draw really, really well, but it just stays in your sketchbook. And I think you have to be brave, and you have to put yourself out there, and you have to be persistent. It's just.
Can I show you a picture of Possum I have?
Yeah. Could you take an analogy about the pole shit? Is that okay?
What?
The pole shit that you said yesterday, like climbing up Hollywood.
Oh my gosh,
I think this is amazing.
Okay, so one of my favorite writers, Harlan Ellison, was quoting one of his favorite writers in a contemporary, Charles Beaumont, and it was about working in Hollywood. So I'm going to swear, so bear with me. But he said that working in Hollywood or in entertainment or creative is like climbing a mountain. It's like scaling a mountain made of shit to get to a single rose at the top. And by the time you've gotten there, you've lost all sense of smell. And I feel like I didn't get that when I first arrived, you know, fresh-faced. And now that I'm like, I totally get that. Because when you get stuff, we've talked about this, you feel like I should have got this 10 years ago. But the cool thing about now is you can make the gig, and the gigs don't really matter so much as your own work. And I feel like the illusion and the seduction, don't get me wrong, writing for He-Man and Marvel and all that stuff and Rick and Morty is great, and it does open doors. But the thing that really does matter most is like what you actually had to say in the first place. And in this day and age, you can really make your own gig. And that's how a lot of these companies still hire. But it's one of those weird Zen things that if you're only doing it to get hired by the company, you're not really, it's not sincere, it's not gonna work. You just have to just put out sincere work, and I feel like get the happiness from that. And I feel like not beating yourself up, if I could give myself one piece of advice, and I have a lot more hair now if I did, I think not beating yourself up and just enjoying the work in of itself. I think my body of work, and I have to also not beat myself up now about it because I can still do this and I am working on it. Like my body of work would be tenfold. I mean, so much greater. I find stories that were rejected by science fiction outlets that get me opportunities today that I wrote years ago, and I thought that was good. I should have just kept writing even more, and I had even more to show now. But that's okay, because I can do more now. So if I were you guys, anyone who's interested in doing this, don't beat yourself up. Just do the work, have fun at it, and everything else is kind of gravy. That's how I feel about it.
Last time I was in San Francisco, I went to a Bob Rauschenberg exhibit. You know that artist?
No.
It's the early, anyway. He kept everything. His exhibit was crazy, like all these little things that anyone would look at and go, look, but it's a Bob Rauschenberg, so it's in a museum. But at some point, Bob Rauschenberg went, this little crap thing, I'm gonna get in a museum. And he kept all of it, and it was so amazing.
And that's why I don't even flush my toilet.
So, do you live in Melbourne and work from Melbourne, or did you have to move?
No, I'm from Melbourne, worked in Melbourne. So,
Melbourne, just
Melbourne.
working on it.
Okay, Melbourne.
So I'm an introvert again. You know, I like people, but I like to be home. I like to, you know, quiet. And what's really nice about what I've been able to do is like I don't speak to anybody. I went to San Diego Comic Con like 8 years after starting with The Simpsons, and that was the first time that I actually spoken to my editor in real life. He'd been pronouncing my name wrong all this time. He'd been calling me Dean Rankine. There's also a little ring to it. But it actually was really nice, and I think that what's hard is that you're not hanging out with other creators as such, so it's kind of, so networking is a little bit more difficult, but you kind of like cold emailing places, and it's, I think there's probably some novelty. They go, oh, some guy in Australia is drawing Rick and Morty, that kind of thing. But it's really so you get to be a big fish in a very small pond when you're working for these properties in a smaller place. But everything was just via email. I have met Matt Rankine though, name drop. But yeah, so it was, if I had to like speak to people on the phone, not like that. No, I wouldn't enjoy that. Yeah, but I don't know. Email, you can think about things. Just from Melbourne. It's funny, like it's the suburb south of Melbourne called Frankston gets shit on for it. It's like and you go, oh, I'm working on Simpsons from here. I don't know. It's kind of cool.
And why do you, as a writer, why do you have to be in LA?
Do you? I mean, I'll tell you a story. I was working at Marvel Comics corporate in New York, and by the time I broke in, I had read about how my heroes broke into comics, and they'd be like, I was in the building and stuff.
I was in the mail.
Yeah, I was in the bullpen. When I broke in, right, I won all these awards in college, so I thought, that's it. I'm gonna be like writing blockbusters next year. Just got this, starter career at Marvel. when I got there, it was very eye-opening because it had super corporatized. So they were like, we only want best-selling authors. I'm like, well, how do you become a best-selling author if they won't even publish you or look at your work or read it? And that was really tough. And they wanted name brand authors. So I worked really hard and I wrote some vendor specs and all sorts of other stuff. And when I finally got a literary manager based in New York at Abrams Artist Agency, as soon as I went like that on the contract, they said, so when are you moving to LA? So back then, which wasn't that long ago, yes. Now, it depends what kind of writing you want to do. I think that if you want to write for film and TV, yeah, and not be in the indie scene, then yeah, I think LA you probably have to be, but I mean, the business is really weird. But if you just want to write and write fiction and short stories and comics, you really can do that anywhere. And you don't even need that many fans, I think, to really build yourself. You just need to do it brick by brick. I need to live in California because my wife wants us to live in California, so I have no choice but to succeed or be, you know, or live in a cardboard box. But all jokes aside, I do love where we live and stuff. LA has a lot of issues, but it does help. I probably should go out networking more, but it's just, there is so much out there that it would be overwhelming if you chased it all. But what I've learned now is everyone I've spoken to really doesn't know what's going to happen after the strikes, and really really nobody knows what's going to happen post AI. And most people I know aren't arrogant enough, including myself, to like really guess what that means. But what I do know is that we do need to do stuff like this, which is like do cons, do social, and just put stuff out there. But I think that the only happiness you can chase is doing the work for yourself in of itself. Yeah.
Any other questions from the audience, we should say?
He's willing to run the mic to you. You don't even have to get up.
You guys are super, super, super loud.
Pop your hand up if you have.
Yeah. Yeah, you can ask anything.
No worries.
Yeah. You said you went to school. Where'd you go to school?
Brooklyn College. I lived in my uncle's attic, actually, in Brooklyn, and I went to school there, so it's my Harry Potter story.
What kind of school is that? Is this like a normal school, or is it like?
Yeah, no, it was part of the City University of New York, and it was just a state, like a city school for collegiate, and it was great. I learned a lot there, and you could take anything, and I made the wise decision to become a film major. And majoring in screenwriting. But no, I learned a lot there, and luckily there were a lot of places to intern. Like a lot of the companies had offices in New York, but a lot of the creative stuff does happen in LA. But things are changing. I mean, you guys have your own studio out here at Weta. That's insane. That's so cool.
There's a couple studios out here. Yeah.
What are the other ones?
There is South Pacific Pictures. That's here in Auckland. And I don't know like the names of the other studios, but they've definitely put some investment in the infrastructure. Peter Jackson's been a big driver of putting infrastructure in the country for filmmaking. So, but we also got a little bit sat down by first COVID, of course, and then the strikes. So it's been quiet the last couple of years.
Oh right. For production, I would imagine the strikes would be affected. Are there a lot of writers based here, or is that like?
That I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there's, you know, of course, you're probably one of the writers in the writers section. They might know some of the comic writers over there. But
well, one of the people working here was like, "We actually have a writer. We never have a writer here." It's like, oh my gosh. Okay.
Like that. Thanks.
Yeah.
So you said you did some formal study. Did you study? Do you recommend?
We have a thing called TAFE. I don't know if you have the same thing here. It was technical and further education. So I did year 11 in high school, and then I think it's like a community college thing. Like I'm not sure. Like if you want to become a mechanic, you go to TAFE, and there's like apprenticeships and that kind of thing.
We've got a thing like that.
Something similar to that, yeah. So it was a 2-year art and design course, and I'm not sure if I learned anything. You know, they go, I want to be a cartoonist. Here's this vase to draw. So I wish I'd concentrated maybe a little bit more. I was having too much of a good time. But no education is wasted. As long as you're you're producing work and trying to get better in whatever context. I think that's good. I think it's really interesting. So I graduated at the end of 1990, and at the time,
Looking old.
and at the time, they part of like they did the speech as they were leaving, in which was I don't know if it was supposed to be inspirational, but they said 90% of visual artists make less than $5,000 a year from their art. And if you look at the statistics now in Australia, it's pretty much the same. You know, it's a brutal. And I think when I say that kind of, I'm not sure if it's self-belief or just kind of stupid, that, oh no, that won't happen to me. You know, that I will be the one who'll make a killing.
I'm definitely gonna write Transformers.
Yeah.
25.
I was like, if I could just be like Kevin Eastman, you know, that would be cool. Yeah, I'm just gonna run down here.
Oh, amazing. Yay.
Are this microphone work over here, guys?
Following on from that, what's your stance on AI in the artist and writer community, especially with comics and animation?
Okay. No. Stroke yourself in.
She went there.
Yeah.
It's important to go there. Dean, you want to go first, man?
Yeah. Language warning. I fucking hate AI. So, just something about AI, how it works in the visual context. You do the other one if you like. Sure. So the stuff on AI, how like the mid journeys and all those kinds of things. The way it came about was they've scraped all this artwork, all this photography, all these images from the internet, and I don't understand why everybody isn't really upset. If you've taken your kid to the beach and taken their photo and put it on the internet, that's been scraped, and I find that horrific, right? So when it comes to like as a professional artist, there's features you can type your name in to see if you've been scraped, and this have been. So how it works is they took our art. They didn't credit us, they didn't pay us, and they didn't ask our permission. That sure sounds like stealing to me. So then what's happening with it now is, I think that's bad enough, but then it's like, now they're using our art to take away our jobs in the process. It's awful. It's just, I just feel like there was COVID, we got through COVID and we scraped through, and then there was like, then Putin invaded Russia and all and then AI came, and now like Adobe, I'm a digital, I work digitally, and Adobe's saying, oh, we'll just take any of that work and will be ours, have a claim to it, and I just feel like I'm under attack from the universe. It's just trying to take my stuff. And I just want to be in my little house, do my little silly drawings without that happening. And I don't know what's going to happen. And I think that they, in film, I don't know if you're a filmmaker, if you're a writer, if you're any kind of visual artist, like if you're a sculptor, they go, oh, how many likes can I get for my 4-year-old who did this amazing sand sculpture? Have you seen that garbage? People go, oh, it's all these likes. The sand sculpture, you can't make these things. You can't actually physically make them. And it goes on the internet, gets all these likes, and then actual real artist gets pushed down further down. As an artist, we did what we were supposed to do. They said, you should put yourself out there, put your work on the internet and show the world your stuff. And we did that, and then it took it. So I feel, I worry. I don't know, if you're an OnlyFans girl, you're in trouble, because they're going to be able to just take it and use it and make a buck on it.
Yeah, and one way that, as a fan of, the artist is, those little things that they try to get you to do to make yourself look like you're in a different time period or a different, you jazz yourself up in your
It's been like an
profiles.
album, something like that.
Yeah, those are stealing from artists. The way they're creating those is they're stealing from artists like Dean to create those and generate those images for you. So one way that you can kind of stand up against that as a fan is to not be posting those on your sites.
Really, I just got me on the wrong really quickly. But I think the other thing is like things like if you've had a good time here at Armageddon. Well, imagine if you want something like this to keep going, like things like the voice actors, they're taking voices. So that like if you want something like this event to continue and you like there's no ethical way to be involved and use AI, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, it's a lot to unpack. Like, I feel like a lot of our social problems are all tied to this too. It's like you take away the jobs and people can't like afford places to live. People can't afford places to live. You have homelessness, and it goes on and on and on. And I feel like where I live in LA is like the front lines for that. I mean, we've got so many homeless people. I'm not saying all those homeless people lost their jobs to AI, but I feel like I know a lot of people who have not worked in 5 months and are really concerned about the future. On the writing front, it is really scary because pretty much like every email and every document that you've put online ever, every single status update, everything you've written online has been fed into this thing. So it's kind of grifted from all of us. The technology, I was speaking to someone, they had a really good point. It's at its worst now. And it's this good now, which means it's going to get better and better and better and better. So like, a lot of writers right now in Hollywood are like, survive to 25. And a lot of Hollywood people are like, survive to 25. And I don't mean to be pessimistic, but in my head I'm like, survive to 25 so that ChatGPT and, Midjourney can quadruple in computational power. Is that what we're trying to survive to? And then it'll quadruple again in 6 months from there. So the way to survive, I think, is to be aware of what you're buying. And I wonder if there is going to be an era where people just want writing from humans and art from humans, and that all of a sudden commands more money because it's special all of a sudden. I mean, that's why valuable art that goes for a lot is rare and special, and that's why people pay for it. And I think that might start happening more in our lifetimes possibly with these sorts of works. The other thing I think that's important is, I was working on a short story and I was thinking, gosh, AI could just write a short story in like 5 seconds. It's not good now. It's going to get really good in the future. Like, what's the point? And then I thought, well, AI can write about a lot of things. I mean, AI could eventually probably get to the level where it writes 20 novels in the voice of any author you ever asked. AI could probably get to the level where you're on your Kindle and it's writing the story as you read it, right? But the thing is, you will really never know someone's intent unless they put it down. Now, if Neuralink goes Wi-Fi, then it can read all our minds to do that. I don't mean to scare you guys. But all jokes aside, I think that what's special about writing and what someone's trying to say, I think even writing that's not amazing could all of a sudden weirdly have value. Because it's what someone's really trying to say, and it's actually what their intent is. And I think all of a sudden, I think the future of all this stuff is going to be authentication, and we already see it with collectibles. Like, people pay a fortune for to CGC a book. Is this actually this edition? Well, I'm looking at it, it looks like that. Yeah, but is there a stamp? Is there a certificate? Do you have that USDA approval thing? And I think all of a sudden art's going to have that, and art that has that is going to be commodified. I probably should start some sort of business like that. Maybe a fortune. But all joking aside, I think that in this day and age, it's forced us to be on a recluse. Someone who doesn't like being in front of the stage, you have to do that now. And I think every writer does kind of have to be like, an artist has to be like Stan Lee. You have to go be out there and promote yourself. You kind of have to be that 10-foot poppy, or I don't know if I use that term, but it's true, because it's going to be the difference between when someone's at like a rack and they see all these like AI generated stuff and they go, do I want to buy that, or do I want to buy from Dean or Josh Sky? Well, I know those guys, I met those guys, I saw them online, they're funny, and I don't know this AI from the wall, so I'm going to do that. And I think that's how we're going to stick out. There was one more point I had, but it kind of escaped me.
Yeah, well, you saying that just made me thinking about the powers we have right here between you as creators. It's like, it feels like there's an post-apocalyptic story in there somewhere, in this world in which trading genuineness is the currency.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's post-apocalyptic. I hope it's not, I hope it's not. I am optimistic about the future, I really am. I just feel like hopefully people tend to not exploit things. I wish Isaac Asimov was alive today, because he wrote a lot about robotics and about people losing their jobs to robotics. And this is actually the first time technology's come out like that. When the loom, I forgot what it was, but in England in like Victorian times, some sort of device came out that could like sew. And they actually outlawed it for a while because it was going to destroy jobs. So I feel like we're going to start seeing laws and stuff. But I feel like there will be a place for authentic human writing, or Dean and I will just be really skilled, hopefully very rich panel makers. I don't know. So anyway.
Sorry, that went to a dark place. Sorry.
Can we go too dark? Can I go too dark?
I think you're much more positive.
Yeah, no, I do. I know, but the thing is, like, but it's kind of cool. Like, we also live in an age where we could like just go to a convention somewhere else. Like that didn't really exist before. I think I would have been a great alcoholic writer in the 1930s, back when they were like, no, back then, like, they couldn't give away some of these assignments. Now it's just like battle and like these writing He-Mans. If you look at the original writers of He-Man in like the 80s, they were like, He-Man, this hunk of Rama guy, who cares? Like, I was laughing as I turned in the scripts. But then you get to my generation, like, I can't believe I'm writing He-Man. This is the greatest thing ever, So things just kind of change, But I guess my main takeaway I was trying to say about AI was that you do have to promote yourself, and that it is your own work and that it's original. I think people will still buy because they'll want something real. I really do think that.
See, you asked a very good question.
Yeah.
That fired off a great bit of feedback.
Oh, want me to come down? Oh, confident.
So, run.
I don't have a question, but I have some good news for you.
Oh, please.
It's like an antidote to the darkness of that last conversation. If you're an artist who puts work in the public domain, especially visual art, there's something you can do right now to kind of not just stop your work from being scraped. It's called web scraping software. Not just preventing it from being web scraped. You can actually destroy the neural learning algorithms that do the image generation. What you can do is put it's called a nightshade poison token into your artwork, and you can embed it. I think you can embed it stegographically, or you can embed it in the metadata of your art. So what that is, it's like if you have, let's say, plastic recycling, they need to melt down all the plastic and then do blah blah blah. It's like putting phosphorus in your plastic recycling thing. So what it does is, it just confuses the heck out of the machine learning models. And it's one of the funny things is that the learning models, they say, oh, we're just like a human observing the public domain. But there's actually nothing wrong with you confusing that observer, and that's what a poison token is. So if there are any artists here who put work in the public domain, if you're not a big fan of AI, which is fair enough, what you can do is put a poison token. So there you go.
Thank you very much for the So I am aware of it. So it's called Nightshade, and it kind of, if they get enough poison, let's say, into the image, it corrupts the image, so the AI can't read it.
Yeah, you don't even need enough. Like, even if one person puts one in, it does something. Yeah.
The other thing is, like, thank you. Yeah, and the other thing is the ecosystems are starting to protect against it. Like, AI art and writing is, banned in a lot of conventions, including the one we're at. And also remember, this is the first time technology came out that the art world thought was going to annihilate it. When photography was invented, people did portraits and landscapes were like, that's it. Why do they need me? They could literally go click and do an exact duplicate of an entire landscape or a person, right? But it didn't spell the end of people. All of a sudden, people who had original portraits, that became a very high status, expensive item. Even assistants, I think assistant work, I was reading a science fiction novel by Robert A. Heinlein, and this is before all this happened, right? It was like written in the 50s, I was 11, but like, it was called Space Cadet. There's a scene where someone's at a restaurant, and they have a real waiter, and that was like a high status thing. And now we're starting to see digital assistants in Hollywood, but there are people who do real assistant work. So I feel like in the future, the people who have real assistants will be rich. And they'll be like, oh, you have a digital assistant? You little bitch. Got a real assistant. JJ, it's something like, so I feel like things will be changing. I think that could be our word too, So
there is a crazy amount of value, just to sort of get really off topic. There's a crazy amount of value in sort of originality. Like there's, in the very, very early stages, art being put on the blockchain. You can say what you want about cryptocurrency, like that's fair enough. But new technology does make it really, really easy for artists to own a specific work and then put out a specific work, and then maybe they'll do only 1,000 releases of a specific work, and that can be seen as actually a financial investment. So you're changing the game. You're not releasing like a personal, a product that people just look at. It's something they can almost invest. Again, I don't want to get too commercial, but do maybe like 2 tools that artists can use as the Poison token.
I think authentic work that's made by humans that emotionally moves people, whether it's visual or written, is going to have tremendous value in the future. I still believe that too.
Maybe it'll finally hold the value it always should have.
Yeah, for sure. You want to do an internship, by the way?
Thank you.
You just said a bunch of stuff that went way over my head, but I'm glad they got it. Amazing. Okay, so last call for any burning questions. Raise your hand. Front.
You want me to come down?
I'll go down.
All right.
I need the steps.
This is a bit of a silly question. It's from one of my friends that I just messaged. What do you think Rick's favorite sample would be?
Hard hitter.
Well,
So hard.
well, the cameras, I don't know. I think that, have you seen that episode recently? It's amazing where when people suicide on a particular planet, then their internal organs become spaghetti. And so have you seen that? It's amazing. I would imagine that would be some really awful thing that you probably can't even talk about it on, with mustard on rye. Yeah? I have to answer the cake, but that's the best I can do.
Thank you.
Cheers, thank you.
Thanks.
Good question. Just to finish up, who's a writer that you love and think we should check out? Who's a cartoonist and illustrator that you're like, check this out?
So Dean Rankine, I'm down in
Yes.
the artist alley.
Anything that inspires you, I should say.
Yeah. I think everyone, like Sergio Aragonis, but everyone would have seen his work. He was in Mad Magazine, he does those little things, and what he does so well is to tell stories without dialogue. And I think that's sort of, I love to do that as well. And it sort of, it connects with people no matter what their linguistic background.
For me, Harlan Ellison, I think everyone should read him. A lot of stuff we're going through, a lot of stuff you just go through in life. He writes about, he's an amazing speculative fiction writer. He's written science fiction and fantasy and all sorts of stuff. He's the sort of writer that you read and go, I didn't know you could be that good. Like grabs you by the fucking throat. I mean, really amazing writer. So definitely check out Harlan Ellison. Definitely, as a shameless plug, follow some Instagram guys at...
Oh yeah, so I'm Dean Rankine with an E on the end. I'm on Facebook and Instagram.
And I'm at Joshua Skywriter. Feel free to message me, ask any questions. If you're He-Man fans, I'm a fan too.
And just really quickly, if you didn't feel confident about coming up and asking a question, we're going to be down at the tables later on. Come on up, we're always happy to chat.
All right, let's give these guys a hand.
Thanks.